welcome to Open Line Online. I'm Bob Slade, joined as always by Judge Bob Pickett. Pickett, good morning to you once again.
Good morning, PBS.
All right, this is our second hour, and you say, well, where are the rest of the people? Well, they're coming. Believe it or not, they are going to be here shortly. Of course, the Sports Brothers are off again this week. Well, they'll be back next week in time for the advancement of the NBA playoffs. As you know, that's still going on. But we want to hear from you. So just text us and say, hey, what's going on? We want to talk about some of the top issues. Yeah, we are going to talk about it. We didn't get a chance to do that today on our radio show. We were dealing with some of the medical issues that are facing our community. And we had a great guest with us, Jennifer Jones Austin, and she is with us again, right with us. She is a community advocate with numerous credits. And, of course, and she's the author of Considered Pure Joy. Who is with us again.
And a fellow ESQ.
There you go. That's right. Your Honor. But we thank you. And we were talking about bone marrow transplants and all the drama that comes with that. And we are glad to have you with us. And, of course, you all are contributed to the Keeping It Real show on Reverend Al Sharpton show, heard on our sister station, WLIB, once a week or so. And glad folks can see you up close and personal.
Well, you know I'm excited to be here with you. I always enjoy. We get to do Keeping It Real on occasion together. I'm just really happy to be here. I listen to you both on Sunday mornings, and so to be here in the studio with you is a big, big deal for me.
All right. Well, it's a big deal having you here. Also, another big deal is Brother Fatim Muhammad.
Oh, yeah.
You produce so many things. We can run down the credits. Open Line.
Keeping It Real. Sunday morning with Reverend Al Sharpton.
Quiet Storm with Lenny Green. Yeah, brothers all over the place.
All over the place. And
when do you get tired?
I try. I cannot get tired. I tell you the truth. But I thank Bob Slade and extending the offer to join you in the second hour here of Open Line Online.
All right, we're going to deal with a little politics and politics first off.
What about our coffee? We any Starbucks?
You better watch your step when you go into Starbucks, especially with that WBLS hat on your head. But that's one of the first things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the National Action Network Convention, of course, that concluded yesterday, the 4-day event, and this is the book that they give you out. I guess the schedule,
schedules, the journal.
The journal. Yeah, this is a 2018 version that our good friend Nitha Khan had a hand in helping to put together, and this is it right here. And Nitha will be joining us shortly, along with the History Brothers. But this is going to be an interesting discussion as we take a look at what they talked about in the NAN convention, which are the top issues that we face out here every day. One of the first, of course, and everywhere I went, every little corner, when you're on the elevator or when you got off the elevator and you're walking down the halls, people stop you and say hi and all that kind of stuff. Everywhere we went, they were talking about the Starbucks story with the two young brothers. And, of course, they were also talking about the Sacramento case. And as I mentioned on the radio broadcast, we got an opportunity on Wednesday, the 18th, to meet the uncle of Stephon Clark, a 22-year-old brother who was shot at 20 times, 10 bullets hit him, and also the grandmother, Sequita was her name.
That's correct.
And she didn't want to come on the radio. I guess we were probably too emotional. But the 18th marked the month period since the shooting took place in March 18th. It's hard to believe the time went like that. Boom, it's gone. And people are still talking about this issue because, Fatim, you have another case. We'll talk about that shortly. But let's start with the Stephon Clark thing because it's a very emotional moment. And you had the family there, and they were attending National Action Network Convention. And you can still see the pain on their faces.
Yes. And when you say it was a month ago, it's hard for us all to believe that it was just a month ago because it's the pain is still so very fresh. Yeah. But the truth of the matter is that it's hard for us to appreciate that Trayvon Martin was so many, many years ago. Michael Brown, it's because it's still raw.
Yeah.
And especially when you consider that we're still, it's kind of a same situation, different community, different city, different state, but it's the same underlying set of facts time and time and time again. And it just makes you, it feels raw, it's painful, but it also makes you wonder, when are we going to do something about this? We, have yet to get charges that, with indictments that then stick, that then go all the way to trial. We are yet to get convictions. It's very real, and it just feels very raw and fresh.
Yeah, and of course, you being with Reverend Sharpton 15 all these years, you have to know that every time you turn around, there's always a fresh case. The other case that you talked about, the new case. Now, this is another one where multiple shots were fired at a vehicle with a black person in it.
That is correct. Deontay Yarber, a 26-year-old father of three, was behind the wheel of a black Ford Mustang when the Boston police officers, this is out on the west coast of California, fired into his car 30 times, killing him. 30 times killing him. And the police approached him from what the witnesses said and ordered him out the car. But he said, for what? I didn't do anything. And as his car was slowly rolling, the police said that his car hit one of the officers, and that's what caused them to fire into the car 30 times, killing them. So there's an investigation, always an investigation going forth. But as you just stated, Bob Slade, yes, all the time it seems like there's something else as you turn the corner. Stephon Clark is still warm in the grave, and now we have this situation going on. It seems like, this type of brutality by the police just never stops. And I just don't know where do we go from here.
Well, it's always us too.
Yes, it's always us.
Majority of the cases is us.
Well, something very interesting is happening. Apparently, the Justice Department is taking a very careful look at what happened to our good brother about a year ago, in terms of I Can't Breathe. You remember?
Yeah, that's 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah,
And
but they're mixed because they can't figure out. The prosecutors say, yeah, we're down with this, but now the Justice Department has to decide whether they're going to file civil rights charges.
Exactly.
And they're conflicted about that. They're
Exactly.
conflicted about whether they're going to file civil rights charges.
Right, and what we're hearing is that the Deputy Attorney General
Yeah.
may not be so inclined because he doesn't think that it would be a winnable case, and so they may not bring the charges,
Right.
even though there may be some merit to it. The other concern that we all should have is that this Justice Department, under Attorney General Jeff Sessions, is looking at and rolling back action on a lot of the consent decrees that came about under the Obama administration after Ferguson, where they looked at what was happening with respect to police community relations. Jeff Sessions came in, consent decrees were put in place under Obama, where they found that there were high tensions, where there was real reason and cause to believe that there was need for improvement in the police departments with respect to how they were engaging black and brown communities. And they put in place consent decrees, and Jeff Sessions came in and said, I don't know if enough research has been done. I don't know if we can really get behind these consent decrees. So you know what? We're going to hold off implementing them, and we're going to do a little bit more work.
And by the way, just joining us is protest brother number one, the one and only Mr. Larry Ham with
Good
People's
morning.
Organization for Progress. And looks like you're dressed to make a speech today.
No, not making a speech, going to a ceremony for my daughter
Oh,
at Rutgers University. She's graduating next
all
month.
right.
So
Oh,
Congratulations,
Congratulations,
brother.
I'm a
Pops.
Rutgers alum.
Are you? All right. So there are a lot of different ceremonies and stuff, awards and stuff leading up to. So I have to be there. But I just want to.
This is your youngest daughter.
This is my youngest and third
Very
daughter
nice.
coming through the Rutgers system.
But don't go there and see something and protest,
And
brother.
I've been there. I've spoken there. I've protested there. My daughter, she's like, Daddy, what are you gonna say?
Well, I can say that your eldest daughter is a good friend.
No,
of our-
my middle daughter.
The middle daughter.
Middle
is a
daughter.
good
Middle
friend of our
daughter.
show, and is doing real well. She's
Yes.
a broadcaster.
He's
up
in Connecticut now.
Yeah, Hartford.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
That's
Hartford,
right.
Connecticut.
Yes,
So
yes.
you've done a good job, my brother.
Well,
Well, she'll be over here at Channel 7 Eyewitness News at some point, I guarantee.
love it.
I think so. She's moving, around. She started here in Jersey with NJP TV, then moved around Fox, CNBC, and then NBC affiliate in upstate New York, and now Hartford.
Very
So
nice.
she's making the circuit. She'll
And
be
then we
back
had her
around.
on here. We had her on here for
Well,
quite
you
a
guys
while.
were seminal in her development.
Amen.
The experience, the opportunities that open line crew gave to my daughter were essential in the development of her career. I'm very proud of her. But I want to say to our guest who was commenting on the consent decrees that you're absolutely right. Newark was one of the cities where a consent decree was put into place in 2014, immediately after the election of Mayor Ras Baraka. And I have to say that, and I'm speaking anecdotally now, not with any statistics, but anecdotally, it did have an ameliorating effect on the police. There had been a slew of police brutality cases in Newark prior to 2014, and when justice came in, things were put in place. The consent decree was put in place. Reforms were made, and it had an impact. But I want to say, why is it that Jeff Sessions has pulled back on the consent decrees? It's political payback, because who endorsed the election of 45? The 333,000 member FOP, Fraternal Order of Police. They endorsed 45, and as payback, he appointed Sessions, who said, we're not only not going to put new consent decrees in place, we're going to bring the current consent decrees under review, which is another way of saying that we're either going to stop them or we're going to interfere with their implementation. So all of this has a political dimension. And I have to say, and I say this as a warning to America, the situation that we're in right now is parallel to the situation that we were in prior to 1967. Prior to 1967, you had a whole slew of police shootings.
And misconduct.
And these caused uprisings in every major city in America, from 1967 through all the way up to 1971. Every major city in America had an uprising, and every one of these uprisings was sparked by an incident of police brutality. And we're heading down the same track. Why? Because all the avenues of redress are coming up negative. We do everything the system says we're supposed to do. We elect people, we march, we protest, we introduce legislation, and it keeps happening. And if this thing keeps happening, I'm telling you, it's a law of physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
And by the way, very interesting, you're talking about the National Action Convention, National Action Network Convention. One of the questions that Brother Fatin and the crew put together was, have we changed in the 50 years since the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? And I'm glad you brought that up, because we haven't changed.
No.
It seems there are maybe some progress here and there, but when it comes to our dealings with law enforcement, that's still messed up. Also, we're dealing with the racial prejudice that's going on, and it seems to have really gotten to the point where you have, now, because of the election that's coming up, the midterms, you have 29 Republican members of the House of Representatives not running for re-election. Why? Because they've got to carry the coattails of 45 and all the damage that he's done, all the racial animus he's spread and spewed for the 1 year and about 80 or 90 days he's been in office.
Well,
it's been terrible.
One of the things that when I was reflecting, doing my own work, reflecting on the 50 years since the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., one of the things that I came to appreciate was that in 1968, we had an African-American male who, while not beloved by everybody, was beloved by enough, who was doing things to help transform this society, having played a lead role in bringing about the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and even the Fair Housing Act of 1968, helping to play a role in that. And then we had Nixon, who ran on a on a platform of an us versus them, right?
Yeah.
A race-based platform. And so then we come forward 50 years later, and we had in President Barack Obama, who was leading, and achieving significant reforms in legislation, even in criminal justice and sentencing reform and things of that nature. And then we had President Trump, who came forward and ran on a race-based platform, an us versus them platform. And so it's history repeating itself in many ways.
Right.
What did we see back in the 1960s, even with those major pieces of legislation? We saw, improvements in public accommodations, in access to schools and things of that nature. But what we saw by 1968 was that things weren't getting materially better. We had the legislation on the books, but because of institutional and structural racism, we weren't seeing the dramatic changes we thought we would see. Well, here we are again in 2018. Significant changes having been made through the years, even healthcare being one of them. But the change is not being dramatic enough. But yet people in power wanting to take us back. 2 steps forward, trying to take us 3 steps back. Not just 2 steps back, but 3 steps back.
But I wanted to say that, looking when we had President Obama, it seems like there was some progression, that things were moving ahead. As you just mentioned, what President Obama did with the decrees, and going forward with other issues that we dealt with in the 60s. And then all of a sudden, the election of President Trump, oh boy, I hate to say that.
I know. It's hard to
It
get out
rolls
your
it
mouth.
back almost 50 years. What's scary is that during the 60s, you had momentum. You had the churches, you had different organizations, you had the people in the streets. You had a momentum moving forward, fighting this. When you roll the clock back almost 50 years, you look at even with Dr. King's writings. First in the book, Why We Can't Wait, he wrote the letter from the Birmingham jail, criticizing the ministers, some of the ministers that were not doing what he felt was their job of dealing with social justice issues. And then in his last book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community, he was basically saying that if things get better, we will move together as a community. But if not, things will be chaotic. Well, it seems like we're headed back to a chaotic state right
Let
now.
let me just add this for the audience out there. The reference that Jennifer made was to the Kerner report.
Right, we talked
Kerner
about that a
Commission.
couple weeks ago.
The Kerner report really spelled out exactly what was going on
That's
in
right.
America and race. And they proposed a number of things which were not fully implemented, but they were very clear that
right.
race was the issue and it must stop. So that's the report, Kerner,
Right,
K-E-R-N-E-R.
and in February.
And by the way, we didn't introduce you properly,
Oh, yeah,
Miss
sorry, I just
Khan.
slid in here.
Miss Nether Khan got caught in a horrible Lincoln
Sorry, I
Tunnel
was
mess.
no, actually, I was just stuck in a whole
All
bunch
right.
of
Well,
traffic,
anyway,
so
she's
my
with us.
apologies
No.
for being late. So, just to piggyback off of that, I know I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but I believe it was in February of this year. There was another report released that said the Kerner Commission actually didn't go far enough, and that institutional racism and things like unequal access to education and housing is even more prevalent than previously thought.
But the important point that Kerner made, I think, was that the fault was not with the people who
That's
were rioting.
Right.
That's right.
It was with the institutions.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
And that's the key.
Well,
That's
let me
the
just
key.
ask that. Let's roll up our sleeves and have a discussion on the tough question that Larry brought up. He said, to every action, there's a opposite and equal reaction. You're going to push people into a corner, and marching, protesting, people are going to feel frustrated. It's not working. You look back at the situation where people got shot in Texas. When I say people started shooting at police officers. I'm not advocating that. What I'm saying, but we need to talk about this for real. Because we can get up here and say, well, you shouldn't do this. But you keep pushing the people into a corner, they're going to come out fighting. Where are we headed? To everybody on this panel, where are we headed if things continue the way they are? I start off with you, Brother Larry.
Well, I think the writing is on the wall. I mean, 50 years after the assassination of Dr. King, this is also the 50th anniversary of the Kerner Commission report. There were uprisings in Baltimore. There were uprisings in Ferguson. There were There's been uprisings of black people every decade, bar none, since the end of World War II. So you're going to continue to see that, and if our issues are not addressed, you're going to see an intensification. The year that Dr. King was assassinated, there were 148 uprisings in cities in 1 year, all around the country. In 1967, the year before Dr. King was assassinated, there were 165 uprisings. Uprisings didn't really die down. The last one was in Camden, New Jersey in 1971, but, every decade, look, Rodney King. That was in the 1990s. There were other incidents in 1990s. So Dr. King himself, you referenced Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? Dr. King wrote that book in 66. It was published in 1967. In 66, Dr. King had already said that the country had turned its back on the war on poverty and on the struggle for desegregation. He said that before he was even assassinated. And then when he talked about Vietnam, he said the Vietnam War was like a demonic suction tube sucking up all the money, that would be used for the war on poverty and turning them into bombs dropped on brown children in Vietnam. These are Dr. King's words, not mine. So we're headed to a real crisis in this country. We're headed to an existential crisis. America is at a crossroads. With the Trump administration, the potential for impeachment, the wide-ranging investigations that Mueller is engaged in, this is taking the country toward a constitutional crisis. There's going to be a real leadership problem in this country, because what we've moved into now is a period of fascism. That's my humble estimation. We are no longer a democracy. Democracy is a false consciousness narrative that's propagated to justify the current situation. First of all, Princeton University did a study several years ago, said America is not a democracy, it's an oligopoly. It's a society essentially ruled by the rich, and citizens have hardly any voice compared to the lobbyists that give millions of dollars to politicians that get elected. But beyond oligopoly, we're in a period now of neo-fascism. I said fascism, but there are a few more things that need to happen to make it fascism, but it's definitely neo-fascism. We have the rule of the most reactionary, right-wing elements of the ruling group in our society. That's why you have this strange, Dalian, surreal situation where people like George Bush, who engineered the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, which to destabilize the whole world, he's like part of the resistance to Trump, or identified, right? Identifies
But
himself.
I think that I couldn't agree more with you, and I appreciate all that you said. I think that what further compounds it, and I say this as a near 50-year-old, so like being in diapers in the 60s, but the level of despair and disdain has only intensified among those who have been ostracized, marginalized, and disenfranchised by this society. In the 60s, we had some hope, right? We had a leader who provided hope, right? We are now at a place where we've been striving with all of these reforms, these legislation, all of these opportunities, if you will, that were put before us, affirmative action and the like, to not have made any tremendous progress, right? To appreciate that we still earn less on the dollar as African Americans and people of color to white people, and black women in particular earning the least on the dollar, yet being responsible primarily for households. To appreciate the incarceration rates are greater, 1 in 3 black men compared to 1 in 18 white men, right? To appreciate that our wealth, we are worse off wealth-wise today than we were, right? Home ownership has not grown, right? So there's a greater, how could all of these reforms been put in place, this legislation, and 50 years later, we're worse off? My point is that thing gets coupled with the trauma of poverty and no real economic opportunity and growth. And that, when you talk about the action and the reaction, creates a bubbling that's even greater. Because what's that line? As Trump himself said, what do you have to lose, right? In terms of black people voting for him. But we're at this point now where many in our community say, well, we have nothing more to lose. That doesn't mean that we're on board with Trump.
Nope.
But that then, when that anger, and gets in the belly, that fire in the belly, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. By the way, as we move on, we still, one of the big issues that was focused on the NAN convention was the Starbucks story, which finally filtered out during the course of the week with the two brothers, Rashawn Nelson and Dante Robinson, making appearances on television, Good Morning America. They were on there and telling their side of the story and how they were just there for like 2 minutes. And the next thing you know, here come the cops because they didn't order anything. They didn't order. They said, no, we're waiting to have a meeting. We were meeting with a white guy, too. And he showed up and said, what's going on? And they said, we're taking these guys in. Shut up and get out of the way. And next thing you know, they carted these young brothers out of there. But we've been going through this drama for years. But once again, people say history repeats itself. No, we repeat history as a society, and it's continuing to happen again, and over again. I'll give props to the Starbucks CEO, Kevin Johnson. He got up and said, "I apologize. This was reprehensible," as he said. He met with those two gentlemen toward the end of the week. I think it was Wednesday, as a matter of fact. We were at the NAN convention. He met with them, says, we're going to do something about this. And then on May 29th, they're going to have a day where they're going to shut down the 8,000 or so Starbucks places and deal with race. Talk about that.
I want to talk about that real quick. This was a question proposed on another show, WRD, Charles Ellison's show
in Philadelphia,
that me and
as a matter of fact.
appeared on. And the question proposed was that enough, what the CEO was doing, in a sense of closing down Starbucks for one day and basically dealing with discrimination and things like that. As you just said, Bob Slade, I commend the CEO of doing that. But I don't think it should just be left there. I think moving forward, there should be other things put in place. For instance, if you're going to do this one-day closing and present this, then I think there needs to be follow-ups during the year or every 2 years. And I don't know what the revolving door at Starbucks is, but there should be something put in place where there's questionnaires, there's other kind of programs put in place that spreads this out. And if you want to root out discrimination and racism, that's a way of doing. You have to implement a large, from my point, a better plan to deal with this.
Right, and not only that, like just to extrapolate, I know we talked about this on the WURD show, but the fact that the police have gotten off without any sort of real accountability. So I'm glad that, Starbucks is being held accountable somewhat. People raised their voices, they boycotted, they're implementing some changes, not enough. But the police also have a lot of discretion as to how they handle a situation. Whether or not, they could have gone there and see these two gentlemen and said, you know what, they're not doing anything wrong. Why did you guys call us?
Right.
We can leave.
Well, that's what happened with the police commissioner,
Right.
Richard Ross, because he had a backtrack by the end of the week.
Right.
Yes.
By Friday, he said, I'm sorry, I messed up.
Yes.
My guys overreacted.
Yes.
Boom, boom, boom. He finally admitted that.
Well, the other question is, and I don't want to downplay. I want to try to keep things in perspective. The fact that Starbucks would close down all of their outlets for one day, that's significant.
It is.
Is it going to bring about fundamental change?
We
No.
don't know.
But what other business has ever closed down all of their operations for one day to deal with the question of race? But we all know that one day of racial bias training is not going to fundamentally change people's behavior. The other question that must be asked is this: how many black managers does Starbucks have? Because it was a white manager of this Starbucks outlet that called the police. I dare say, had it been a black manager, the police probably would not have been called.
Well, there's a situation that came up that there was a black manager that did something similar. It may have not called the police, but there was a customer there, black
Elderly
woman,
woman.
a elderly woman
What
that
facility?
asked her.
What facility?
Starbucks.
Starbucks.
No, I'm saying what in
What town?
Philadelphia?
I don't remember what state. I don't remember what state. Asked her for the code for the bathroom to wash her hands so she can purchase something. She just basically was shopping. She just wanted to go wash her hands, and
Right.
she explained this
Right.
to a black manager, and he would
Right.
not give her the
Right.
code.
Well,
Right,
I
they-
think,
they-
but
they
I
can't-
think
Call
what's
the cops.
important to remember is you can draw parallels even with police misconduct cases, yes? It's
Right.
not always the case that it is a white police officer that does the shooting
Right.
and the killing.
No.
We see the same thing.
Right.
And so these are practices and patterns
Right.
that permeate, that
Right.
go beyond,
Right.
race and bias.
But the majority of them are
Agreed.
white.
I
The
completely
majority
agree. I'm
are
just
white.
saying
I
that-
don't excuse the black ones who do it, but the majority are white. And then the other question that must be asked is how many Starbucks franchises are owned, or operated, or leased by black owners?
I think all of this is fair. I mean, and you're getting into the economics and opportunity piece, but let me just stay in one
And that's the
place.
fundamental question.
That is absolutely important. I too agree that one day or one half day of training is not enough.
Right.
But what I do appreciate is this CEO understands the platform and the power of Starbucks. He understands two things, right? He understands the platform and he understands business.
Yes.
Right? And he understands that he had to do something more than
Hello.
moving one manager from, one location to another. He knew he had to
Didn't
make
fire her.
Right.
Just moved
But
her.
knew he had,
If that had been a black person, they'd have
They'd
been
have been
fired.
gone.
Right, but
They'd have been
let's just
fired.
stay here for a second. There's a whole lot that we can challenge.
Right.
But there are some other things that we need to pay attention to so that we can then stay on it with this particular CEO. So he has in some ways brought this issue even more to the forefront by saying, I'm going to do a half day of training, right? Because he knows that after that half day of training, we're not going away.
Right.
We're now leaning in even more. And then what? So what, right? So if another incident occurs or another altercation, he knows he's on the line for that. He knows his business is on the line for that, right? And so what I'm really getting at is what often happens for us as a people, and I say this as black people, we call attention to the issue in the moment, but we don't stay the course. And so he's now elevated this, right? By making this a national response. So what more comes with that national response?
And if another incident happens, we should call for a national boycott of Starbucks. There's a Starbucks in every black community. Starbucks is becoming as numerous as Dunkin' Donuts, and black people buy a lot of that Starbucks
Hey, yes,
coffee.
they do.
And if this keeps happening, there should be a national boycott of Starbucks. And I'm going to tell you something. It's incidents like this that are going to cause a riot. Now, I don't know about you. If I was in Starbucks waiting for somebody, people come to Starbucks all the time. There people be in there for hours and don't buy nothing.
Right.
They sitting in there on their computers, writing
Oh, of
papers,
course.
writing articles for Huffington
But
Post.
at that Philly Starbucks,
I'd buy something.
yeah, well, you're living in the coffee shop. But at that Philly Starbucks, the interesting thing was the reaction of the patrons who were there, the white patrons
Right.
who were there, who said, "Hey, what? They didn't do anything. What are you doing?"
Right. And if there had been just 3 degrees of difference in ingredients, that situation would explode.
Ooh.
I know if I had been in Starbucks and some police tried to arrest me, because I know how I am, and I felt that I was
How
being,
is that, Larry?
and if I felt I was being unjustly arrested, I start to see white. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I start to see a flash of
Well,
light.
we
and
don't
and
do
it's
enough.
and had there been a crowd of young people, and it would have been on.
Oh, my
It
goodness.
would have been
But
on.
but to your point, I don't think we're doing enough to talk about how our brothers responded.
Right.
And
they were cool
how
and calm. I
they
give them
were
credit.
Cool and calm,
phenomenal.
right? And they exemplified, as unfortunate as it is, they exemplified, the behavior that we need to make sure that our young boys and our young girls try to emulate, right? I mean, it never should have happened.
No.
But they demonstrated what it means to care about your life and be more concerned about your longevity and your survival in that moment, because it could have gotten very ugly.
I commend those brothers for being cool and calm, but all black people ain't cool and calm.
I understand
All
that.
black women ain't cool and calm.
And a lot of
And
them-
one day they gonna roll up on the wrong person
Understood.
who is not gonna be cool and calm.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be a crowd of people standing around. And I'm telling you, it's gonna be on. I am not propagating. I'm not saying that this is the behavior that people
This is
should
the
have.
climate that
This
we are
is
in.
the climate. Everybody
Climate we-
is not college educated. I
Understood.
got 2 degrees. I got 2. I'm a graduate of Princeton University. I know if those cops had to come in there, I would not have been as cool and calm as
I'm
those
with
brothers.
Larry, wouldn't have been.
I'm like, what are you arresting me?
And
No,
agreed.
I'm not going away willingly.
Agreed.
I'm not. I would have raised hell. I would have caused a crowd to come into that.
Right.
We want to
place.
hear from
You're
you
not
folks out
gonna
there, by the
arrest
way.
me
We
for
want to hear
something
from
that I
you folks.
didn't
What
do.
would you have done? Bob Pickett, read some of those tweets, some of the texts from some of the people. Because what would you have done? Sister Jennifer, what would you have done?
In all honesty,
Yes, in
I'd
all honesty.
like to think. Now, keep in mind, my background, I'm the child of a civil rights leader who spoke truth to power, who said, freedom is the ability to say no to a lie, to veto an untruth. I have a mouth on me, and I have a temper at times. But I'd like to believe that I would have tried to remain composed, because at the end of the day, I got to get through that situation. I don't know what would have happened, but I got to get through that situation. And at the end of the day, my composure is what's going to hold up in court, right? When they try to challenge and undermine my credibility,
Character, yeah.
my character is what's going to hold up. And I'm not saying that we all can get animated and charged up with good reason. And they had every reason to be. These 2 young brothers had every reason to be incensed and to be angered and to act out that anger. But in this society today, that can cost you your life. And
Yes,
so
ma'am.
all I'm saying is try to hold it together for as long as you can, because you don't know if erupting is going to cost you
But
your
Bob
life.
Slade pushes community policing. I know you push
Neighborhood-
community
they
policing,
call
but I'm
it
sitting back
neighborhood
thinking
policing
about
now.
this. And if they would have been called on me, the first thing far from my head is I'm going to get arrested for this. But then when I say I'm waiting for the person, and the person walks in and say, yeah, I came here to have a meeting.
Yes.
Right then, common sense says, wait a minute, hold on. They haven't done the crime. Listen, if you didn't purchase anything, and the manager did call, then you do have to leave. Okay? But I'm not going to arrest you, especially if you
Agreed.
haven't gotten loud, you haven't done anything disrespectful to me as a police officer. There's no reason for me to get upset or to arrest you.
I agree.
And that's
Well,
why
the
that's why the
audience-
chief of police came down after he thought it over, said, "Oops, I made a mistake." They made a mistake.
Right.
They didn't act properly on this. Boom.
Yeah, but there was no repercussions.
No,
there's
I know.
It could
nothing
have
with
led to
police,
somebody
and
getting their head
could have been
busted,
busted, yeah,
or
somebody
even
get hurt,
worse. And
killed.
then the police chief, it would have been worse.
And this
Well,
is
we
the
gotta-
problem. There's never no repercussions.
Right.
They
Right.
kill us.
Yes.
They arrest us.
They maim us.
brutalize us.
And there's
They
no
violate our
accountability.
rights, and there's no repercussions. You can count the number of police convictions in police brutality cases on one
If there's
freaking hand.
if there's no video in Charleston, South Carolina, that police officer would have walked, because the way he set it up. Remember, he shot Walter
Right.
Scott in the back,
Right.
shot him in the back, and then plant the taser by him and said he pulled my taser.
Yeah.
But there was someone filming. And see, in Rodney King, we had a film. They got off.
All
You
right.
understand? So at the end of the day,
All right, so-
there's a
Everything they get
film.
off.
You got
They got
some-
off.
you got some
want me to
comments
make
from folks?
comments?
Yeah, we have a
Or-
number of comments.
They shot Amadou Diallo 41 times. They got off, and then got rehired by the fire department.
Exactly.
All right, we got several excellent comments, and one of the comments said, "Right on, Larry, right on." Okay, okay. And Edward Latson says the Philly police didn't make a mistake. They, and he uses a curse word, effed up.
All right.
I'm sitting next to Larry. I'll pull out my afro.
Like Black Power.
Okay, and then Bernard Blue Rowell says, yes, when you go off, they want to charge you for disorderly persons, but it's all cool because these brothers are going to get paid.
I hope so. Get that
all
money.
right.
Come on.
And the sister is right. She is absolutely. What's your name, sister? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Jennifer Jones.
Jennifer.
Sister.
She is
Sister
absolutely
Jennifer.
right. In these situations, people should stay calm and maintain control of the situation. But people don't plan to stay calm
right.
or not plan. Let me tell you something. I was in the Willowbrook Mall. I'm gonna say where it was. I was in the Willowbrook Mall
In Wayne, New Jersey,
in Wayne, New Jersey, in the food court, and I was hungry, and I went to the sushi bar or whatever it is, one of the Asian eateries, and I'm standing there, and I was standing there for like a little while, waiting my turn, calmly, coolly, to get my food. Someone else walks up, and the person behind the counter served that person before me. Man, I was like, wait a minute. I've been standing here 20, what am I, invisible? And I'm telling you, I saw that white light. I saw that white light.
Heard that white noise.
And man, and everybody came out from the back. Oh, okay. We don't plan to erupt.
Right.
That's why it's called an eruption. Because if it was planned, it wouldn't be called an eruption. It'd be called something else.
So let me tell you.
It's unplanned.
So Larry, I had a similar situation once. I walked into a local chain breakfast and lunch spot here in the city, and I was standing at the counter, and the people, the workers were like kind of buzzing behind the counter doing different things. And when they turned to receive the customers, there was a person who came up behind me and was now standing to the side of me. And, they looked at the two of us, and then they went to her first. She's of a different hue than I am, right? And they served her, and she went on about her way. And when they came to me, I said, what was that about? Can you explain to me what just happened there? Well, I didn't know who was first. I said, well, who was standing at the counter? She was off to the side behind me. Who was at the counter? Well. I said, he said, well, I'm here to help you now. I said, you're here to give me what I wanted for free now. Is that right? I said, that's what we're going to do. I was charged up. I was like, but what I'm seeing more and more is it is hard. It's happening every day.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem to stop.
And
That's
it's
just
hard
not, and
to-
these
you know,
young
sometimes-
people are a
and-
different kind of group now.
Right,
They're not
absolutely.
trained in nonviolence resistance. They they're gonna get out here and make noise, but you're not gonna push them into a corner. And you're not gonna push them into the corner like some of us were pushed in the corner during the '60s. It's not
No.
going to
No,
happen.
and while I agree with everything you said about remaining calm, right? Like, it's so important. We all should do that no matter what situation. But the fact that the onus is on them and not the police, not the people who are in charge of protecting and serving, who should de-escalate
I
a
agree.
situation instead of escalating it. That is the problem. Like, why is the onus on civilians, on individuals, and not those in power?
And not only that,
That's
the
what the problem
customers in the Starbucks, and I'm going to end it here,
That's right.
basically said, what are you guys doing? No, you can hear the video. It was shot by a white lady, by the
Right.
way, white customer, who said they didn't do a thing. And she's been on the cable channels telling her side of the story. They said, why were you doing this? And all the customers said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. They didn't do anything. And once again, that's why the Starbucks manager had to call it reprehensible.
We have a
what it
bunch of
was.
other comments.
Go ahead.
I'll read a couple. So Edward says, and the crazy thing about Starbucks is they're supposed to be the beat next store where people burn off Wi-Fi and hang out all day. When did they become Woolworths? Chuck Grant says,
Good one.
do we really have justice for our people anymore? The people have had enough of this racial injustice, protest and marching. I think we know where we're heading. Felicia says, the law enforcement is the new KKK. They're not hiding under white sheets anymore, and they're not night riders as much anymore because they don't have to.
That's a Bob Pickett one right there.
Dudley says, sorry to say, from the CEO's point of view, it's still about money, African Americans' money. The attention this received would have had an impact on their bottom line.
Yeah.
I just want to say this real quick because I know Bob said he wants to move on. Again, I can't tell if Bob Pickett mentioned these gentlemen will get paid. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, they haven't mentioned they're not suing yet.
Yeah,
But don't trust me,
what
they're
I'm
going
saying,
to.
and
Well,
again, I
that's
can't tell people what to do with their money, but I just think that one idea is the CEO is serious about not only this situation, but these gentlemen, and not only apologize to them face to face, but maybe since was there for a business
Right.
meeting,
Real
maybe to
estate, I think
support
they're-
their business,
Yeah.
or
Right. We
possibly
talked about
set
that.
them up to start off to have a franchise
There you go.
going forward, and that handoff or passing that baton back into our community
Sounds
makes a difference. That's how you make a difference.
Sounds
Well,
But
that's what
I
you'll
must-
send that message to
I
the
must-
Kevin Johnson, the CEO of Starbucks, and then maybe he'll take that idea up. That's a good idea.
I
By the
like
way, very quickly before we move off the NAN convention, you had a lot of speakers there. You had, we'll pop the pictures up. You had Bernie Sanders. Bernie
Yes.
Sanders was there. Bernie Sanders was in the
Bettina
house.
and I snagged a pic
with
with
some-
them.
some
all right.
with somebody. He was hanging out with somebody special.
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
somebody that
right?
we know, as a matter
Neither
of fact.
Khan.
Yeah,
Bettina and I
there it is, right
there's
there.
the picture.
There
Yeah,
you
we
go.
I was like, I never take pictures with celebrities, but I was like, Bernie, we got to do it.
Man.
Very
Okay.
nice guy.
Yeah, nice guy. Elizabeth Warren was there. She was also there. You had Senator Kamala Harris. She was there.
Senator Warren.
Kirsten Gillibrand was there.
Governors.
You had governors there like
Phil
Andrew
Murphy.
Cuomo,
What you call him?
Phil Murray, Murphy.
And Andrew Cuomo,
Yeah, you had
which who
former-
made news.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, Eric Holder was there.
Yes.
He made news.
He made
Yes.
big
He made news by
Yes.
saying, "Yeah, I may run in 2020.
Oh.
I'm thinking about it." So stay tuned for
And
that.
Had
and
Senator Cory Booker.
Cory Booker,
Correct.
yeah.
Congresswoman Frederica Wilson was there from
That's right.
from Florida, which she stated that I said on the open line show at 8 a.m. this morning that she feels that Trump will not suffer any consequences dealing with the Russia probe, but she feels that with further investigations, he will be brought up on some type of money laundering.
Yeah, money laundering or conspiracy.
And she said he will go to jail.
And I hope so. By the
Unless
way,
he pardons himself, can he?
well,
Don't forget, we also had the House.
And if they bring him up on
House of
state charges.
Representatives, Minority Leader Nancy
right.
Pelosi.
And Nancy
Right, she was
Pelosi
there
was there.
too.
That's
She
right.
was there.
Yeah, she was there.
Jill
Also,
Biden, did we mention
Tom Perez was there,
Tom
the head of the Democratic National Committee. By the way,
Yeah,
the
Ben Jealous
Democrats.
was there because he's running for
Governor.
governor
Right.
of Maryland.
Right.
Yes.
And by the way, the Democrats are suing the Trump reelection campaign, the Russian government, and WikiLeaks, seeking damages for all that email nonsense that they put off during the election, and all that kind of stuff. So let's stay tuned. By the way, there's history behind that. The Democrats in 1972, take you back to Watergate now, sued the Republican Party in September of 1972. This will refresh your memory, Pickett. If you sit in your mind, you'll say, is that true? Yes, it is true. This is before the Senate Watergate Committee hearings, which were held in 1973. Understand that? They sued the Republican Party for the break-in at Democratic headquarters, the Watergate Hotel. Fast forward, we had the Senate Watergate Committee hearings, the summer of '73. You also had the firing of two special prosecutors by Tricky Dick Nixon back then in '73. All right, we had two special prosecutors. We also had the release of the tapes. You also had a House Judiciary Committee hearings, and you also had a vote for impeachment upon the time that Richard Nixon, the Republicans came up to him on August 8th of 1974 and told him, brother, we can't help you. You got to go. And that's when Tricky Dick resigned. By the way, it's interesting to note that on that date, the Republican National Committee paid the Democratic Party over $700,000 in damages for the break-in.
Really?
That's when that lawsuit was settled.
Connect the dots, Slay.
There
Way
you
to
go.
go, my brother.
So
my
the Democrats
brother.
is trying to get paid.
Well, yeah.
That's the moral of this story.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind getting paid too. I mean, they're all in cahoots. Everybody knows that. So that's the story behind that. When we go to the bottom line, very quickly, I want to talk about what is happening with the situations involving your boy Trump, picking up on your boy Pickett, because now he's all out of. Here's the case. He jumped on Barack Obama like crazy about playing golf. Get out of here. You're playing too much golf. So I would never leave the White House if I were elected. He's been in the White House, like I said, for almost a year and 90 days.
And he's been in Florida how long?
He's been playing golf for 109 days.
Yeah, I think it's more than that.
No, it's 109 days.
Yes, it's 109.
Well, I think it's
something like that.
147.
It's more. It's more than
at a
any other
Trump-
president.
Yes.
No, at a Trump property, it's been like 147.
Really?
Because not all of those are golf days, but
Yeah.
actually, like,
But he's been
one
playing
of his
golf.
properties-
Yeah,
about
he's
one
played
quarter
golf
of the
for
days.
109 days. Which is sick.
He played golf on MLK birthday, right?
Yeah, he played golf
He
yesterday
played- when the funeral was
funeral
going
for-
on for Barbara
for
Bush.
Barbara Bush. He was
Yeah.
playing golf.
Well, he wasn't
He
invited.
wasn't invited.
He said he said if he was coming, he didn't want to come because he was invited, but he didn't want to come because it would cause a traffic problem and all the security and all that. That's bull.
Well,
Because
his wife was there.
Melania went, yeah.
Well, now let me just pause because I was listening to that too, and then I did a little bit of reading and found that it is customary for sitting presidents not to attend the funerals of former first ladies. So even though that was a statement that he wasn't going because it was disruptive, that has been a norm of sorts. Not to say that it hasn't been broken from time to time,
Right.
but that the first lady, the sitting first lady, will attend, but the president himself often does not attend.
Was there a reason behind that, or that's just
It-
the way it's
it-
been done?
Yeah.
More like a tradition, not a
Right.
rule.
Right.
By the way, very quickly, we're dealing with the drama involving Stormy Daniels, and it seems that Stormy Daniels' former lawyer, a fellow by the name of Pete Davidson, is reportedly cooperating with prosecutors in the probe of Trump's counsel, Michael Cohen. All right, and of course, Michael Avenatti is the attorney for Stormy Daniels, and he's been all over the tube. He was on Bill Maher's show, and he's
He's a bulldog, boy.
He's something else, this guy.
My favorite line is I heard him say, Trump's people are playing checkers. I play
play
chess.
chess.
There you go. And by the way, Cohen, by the way, was the fixer in arranging that $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels 11 days before the 2000.
Wait a minute, is this the same guy that? Wait, is this the same guy that went after the Clinton email? Is this the same guy that went after and said that she's the worst and this and that?
Yeah.
And he comes in. I never expected all of this here.
Yeah.
No, you're talking about
Talk
Trump.
about the president.
Yep.
He's the one that went at Clinton. She's the worst. She's the this. She's the that.
No,
And
wait,
his stuff
wait.
is worse than
I'll
that.
do you one better. This is the man who, during the presidential debate with Hillary Clinton, had the nerve to bring the women, the 6 women
Oh,
who had
yes.
accused
Bill Clinton?
Yes,
Mhm.
with
Yes.
his known history.
Mhm.
But see, I guess,
Grabbing women
because
in
of a
the
Michael
private
Cohen
area.
and his friends at the National Enquirer and others, he felt that he was good to do that because he had, he
Right.
kind of closed the box. He sealed it up.
Right.
Plus Trump's base, the evangelical base, gives him a pass. All is
Right.
forgiven,
My God,
whatever he
this
does.
is crazy. Just crazy. By the way, one other thing that took place this week, we had another anniversary, and that's the Columbine. We had a lot of school children across the country walk out of school protesting gun violence. I thought it was great. Another show. These young people ain't taking it, man. I'm telling you right now, they're the future, and they're letting you know.
Absolutely.
Not only are they ready,
Yeah.
they are super ready.
Congresswoman Frederica. State of Florida, as you just stated, Brother Slade, that these young people, like you said, they are gung-ho, they have their focus, they are registering people, out there, they want them to vote, they are putting their power behind. If they can't vote, they are having other people support candidates that
Right.
support them and their issues. They are very, very smart, and they're moving strong ahead on this.
You guys know I went down to D.C. to
Yeah.
cover the march, and even along the route, they had people there registering people to vote. So they understand the importance of taking this into actual, actionable change.
Yeah, I know, Sister Jennifer. You have your son is here. young brother there. Looks just like you, as a matter of fact. Hey, there you go. And
Could you repeat that again? He looks just like
yeah, look, you favor mom. That's okay. That happens in families. Once again, does he talk a lot about this and what's going on, or what?
We do talk about it.
Mhm.
We talk about we talk about it and contrast it, frankly, with what has happened in Chicago and in other urban settings. We talk mainly about one, how guns need to be controlled. There needs to be greater gun control reform. But then we talk about the inconsistencies and the differential treatment afforded black and brown children when they are dying at the hands or due to gunshots, gun shootings disproportionately on a daily basis, and nothing seems to be done about that. So, I guess what I'm getting at is that for me, in our household, for us, it's not just we need gun control reform, but let's also pay attention to and be ever mindful of the racial inconsistencies, the racial disparities, and the racial inequities, and how it plays out even when it comes to gun control reform.
I agree with you. One of the other things that must be brought out is that in this second march, whereas with the first march, kind of everybody was with it. And when I say everybody, I'm really talking about people in authority, because people in authority don't want kids to be bringing guns to school. They don't want, of course they don't want that. But there was a lot of resistance on the second march. There were superintendents of
yes.
school systems who stood up and said the students shouldn't march, they
Yes.
shouldn't walk out. See, this is a contradiction. We tell the young people, be active, you're doing a great job, but then when they go out to actually do it, there's resistance. And a lot of students across the country were suspended
Yes.
by their principals and other people in authority for leading walkouts. And if the people in leadership, I'm talking about our elected officials, who are praising these students, and they should be praised, they need to come to the defense of those students who have been suspended
I agree.
for leading walkouts, and they should demand that school administrators, superintendents, readmit them and take off with whatever disciplinary action or infraction is on their school records. Don't tell students to be active. Don't praise them for being active. And then when they are active,
That's
you're
right.
suspending them and throwing them out of school.
We had a
That's
sit-
wrong.
We had a situation here back in 1979 in New York City where they wanted to get rid of, they said, funding for the Board of Education at that time. And they said there was a funding situation where they didn't have enough funds for sports. So they were getting rid of JV and varsity. Yeah, I was about to lose my mind. So there was going to be a walkout. And what I did is I went home and discussed this with my parents. And my parents said, well, what do you want to do? Why are you bringing this to us? I'm saying, well, I'm bringing this to you so you'll know that I'm walking out. I made my decision. I'm walking out, But what if we disagree? I'm walking out. I'm at that stage to take up some of my issues. When we walked out and we went down there, we won. It was put back into the funding. They found funding. They put it back into the schools. But I agree with you. If the parents, they got to get behind, those people have to get behind these kids to make sure that, that their rights are protected. They have to.
That's how I got my start as an activist at the age of 17.
Well, we have a picture of you from back in the day.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I saw that picture of him.
Let's see if we can
This is
pop
Protest Brother when he was young. Ew, which
Can you
one is
tell
you?
which
now?
one
Wait.
is me?
With the afro.
That's right.
There you go, big afro. You got a big afro up there.
That's
Come
when
on.
that's when I was in college. I was older.
great picture.
I was old. That's at Nassau Hall, which is the administration building, Princeton
I knew it was
University.
you. You got Converse on.
No, those Adidas.
Those Adidas,
Yeah,
yeah.
Three stripe.
My
Somebody
Adidas.
got 69 these are kids, pro kids.
Right, but we were protesting against South Africa. And it's interesting, we were talking about this. The head of security, a week in advance of this takeover, had a press conference, which is highly unusual. He said there will be, no sit-in at Princeton University because there were sit-ins going across the country. And then a week later, 210 of us took over Nassau Hall, and they threatened to throw us all out of school. But we stayed united and fought through. There was such widespread support for us on the campus that they just gave us disciplinary reprimands. No one got thrown out of school. But 4 years before this, or actually 7 years before this, when I was a high school student, I led my first walkout at RTI. My principal told me, because, you know, you always got somebody that can't keep a secret. They went and told the administration, oh, they plan to walk out. She said, if you walk out, you are going to be suspended and you're not going to college. That's what my principal told me, who, by the way, was black. But
who was the principal?
I'm not going to say her name because I consider her a friend now.
Bob Pickett? No,
she-
no. Principal Bob Pickett.
No,
No.
but interesting. I was general counsel during that period of time.
Oh, yeah?
Right. So we led the walkout. We took over the 2 floors of the Gateway Hotel across the street from Penn Station in Newark. And I actually thought I was going to be going to get thrown out of school again because I had been thrown out in 8th grade.
You're right.
But because our thing was so organized, and this is a word to the students, always be organized, not only did they not throw me out of school, but 3 months after the sit-in of 1971, I was appointed as the youngest member in the history of the United States voting member of Newark Board of Education.
Very good.
At the age of 17. I wasn't even old enough to vote at that time. So I say this to the young people who are organizing: stay unified.
That's right.
Don't let people divide you. If you stay unified, you can come through the fire.
Right.
You know, but sometimes, I'm gonna say this too, sometimes
They're gonna
it's
stop
not a
you,
fairy
but-
tale ending.
No,
That's
they're
right.
gonna try to stop
Sometimes
you.
people do get thrown out of school, and a
They
lot
do.
of students were thrown out at these anti-apartheid protests. And before that, in the protests for black studies at a lot of college campuses, and in the civil rights
That's
movement,
right.
there were many students
That's right.
that got thrown out of black
Right.
colleges.
Right.
But the thing is, if you don't stand
That's
for
right.
something,
Something,
you'll
you
fall for anything. And by the way, very
I want to
quickly,
say to
I
the
gotta-
navigator, real quick,
What?
just real quick. And I wanted to ask Nither, did you notice this? There's a groundswell on social media. It started Friday night and through the weekend that now, because I call Trump the master distraction,
Distractor.
but there's something out there now talking about where North Korea said we're not going to test anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And now his supporters are saying he is the best president ever
Oh, that's
because no other president has gotten North Korea to stop their program.
Right.
What do
Well,
you
if
think
it-
about
Well,
this?
if it happens, it would be fantastic. As I always say, I'm always for diplomacy and negotiations as opposed to war and dropping bombs and escalating things. But the key is if it happens.
Well, North Korea said this.
Right,
They
they
said
said it,
that
They're
they're not going to
suspending.
But
test.
there's
But,
a lot
They're
of
suspending what they're doing.
Right, but there's a lot of
they're
people
not-
but you
who
know
say
why they could be
Stop it.
suspending this also? Is because we perfected. We don't need to test it anymore
Yeah,
now because
they
we
got
got
it.
it perfected
Yeah.
for what we need to do right
That
now.
is well, too.
Yeah, very quickly. Once again, we want to send big props to our special guest, Sister Jennifer Jones Austin. Her book is called "Consider Pure Joy." There it is. There it is right here.
It's
she
a
has
good
a copy
one.
of it
They
too.
say it's a good
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Who has an
yeah.
amazing story?
Are
that
we
I
gonna
didn't know
are we gonna
until
get
the
some
convention.
books, Jen?
We can send you
She
some
can
books.
send
We
you
can do
books.
that. It's a
People that
great
cheap
book.
people won't even buy a copy. Buy a copy, Piggy.
All
Sister,
that-
On the way in, when I was driving in and I was listening to the radio show, I have to say, the show with Jennifer this morning was very powerful.
well, thank you.
And the discussion was excellent, and I just commend you
Thank
on
you.
on your story.
I'm just glad to be with all of you to be able to talk about these issues.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great
You know,
pleasure.
ranging from healthcare to police misconduct to
Great pleasure.
Trump and his misconduct
Yeah,
and
right.
everything in between.
And
Yeah,
by
Larry,
the way,
Larry, I
your
have a-
son's name is?
My son's name is Channing Austin.
Channing.
And
Wonderful.
watch him because he's an up and coming baseball player.
I thought he
Oh,
looked
wait a
athletic.
minute.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, I got practice this morning, young Chan.
Hey, Larry, I got a question about the photo.
Right.
Where is Mr. Akili Buchanan?
Achille was a year behind me.
He was-
I don't know. He was a year. No, he had graduated.
Okay.
Right there.
A year.
I have in front of you. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
your
but
mic.
put your mic up,
Larry.
Larry.
Your mic,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Achille Buchanan
Don't do
also
that.
went to Princeton
Ron,
University.
knock you
He was a
down.
year ahead of me, so he wasn't at Princeton
Part
when we
of
had
that.
this sit.
Part
But I
of
want to say for Achille Buchanan, he was the one responsible for changing the name of Southside High School to Malcolm X Shabazz
Right.
High School.
All right.
Right.
Very good.
And they were after him. And the board, this was something that the board voted on and supported. After the name of the high school was changed, that brother was under attack from everybody.
Well,
but
he is
but he
missing
came
today.
through the
We missed
fire.
him. Take care of yourself, Brother Akili, as we get ready to sign
wait,
off.
real quick, can we just shout out the viewers too? Because there's so many people who stopped me at National Action Network convention and said, we watch you guys every Sunday.
Really?
So thank you guys for tuning in. We
Right.
got to show them love.
There we go. Once again, get well wishes for Roberta Flack,
Yes,
who was at
indeed.
the Apollo Theater on Friday and had to walk off the
get
stage.
well,
She
Roberta.
felt faint. They took her to the hospital. She's okay. She sent out a message.
How
I'm
old is she?
feeling fine.
81.
81.
I'm gonna give her a call because we talk time to time.
Uh-huh.
We talk time. to
She's
time.
okay. She's okay. Yeah. Also,
And Tume worked with her, and
That's why I
Long
talked to
time
her
ago.
because of
Yeah,
when
right.
Tume,
I think he was
I have
there
a
on
relationship with
Friday.
her.
Yeah.
was he there?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Of course, our condolences to the former First Lady Barbara Bush, who passed at the age of 91. They called her the enforcer in her family. That she was. I guess she laid down the law. Also, the electronic DJ Avicii passed away at the age of 28.
28. Something doesn't sound right with this one.
young, very
And
young.
of course, we're remembering the passing of Prince 2 years ago yesterday.
Yes.
I got a
Prince.
chance to see those pictures. You know, some news places wouldn't air it, but I'm not going to advertise. But I did get a chance to see those
Once
pictures
again,
where he laid dead in front of the elevator. I did
Yeah,
get a chance
right.
to see.
Bob Slade and I had the honor and the pleasure to run into Prince. What? How long ago? About 5, 6 years
Yeah,
ago.
so yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
It was some
at a concert.
event.
It was a concert place.
Yeah.
So
He was.
talented.
He was going to the bathroom.
Yeah, right.
He was
Exactly.
going to the bathroom.
Seeing somebody else.
Right,
And
right.
Prince was in the house.
Yeah.
Yo, Prince.
Prince was a down brother because there was a young lady that I had met in his back in Minneapolis, and she had a youth group, and it got word out that she lost her meeting place, and Prince got in touch with her and said, "Bring that meeting group to my house."
Oh my.
And also, Prince made a song about reparations.
Right.
Oh, that brother was not on point.
He
He's-
made
no,
a
he was on
song
point.
about
And this is, by the
reparations.
way,
On his record company.
Reparations for African Americans for enslavement.
There you go. This is a Prince weekend here at WBLS. We're playing Prince songs all over the place. And you know, everybody has a favorite. Mine will always be, forever be, Purple Rain. I don't care
Oh,
what
no
anybody
doubt about it.
says.
It was
I can listen
excellent.
to that umpteenth times.
Excellent.
Well, I hope our black-oriented station will play the song on reparations, too.
Well, maybe they do. I mean, you never know. But we are out of clock. We got to go.
Yeah, BBS. As you know, last week we had an excellent show, and the theme was about 45, and the
We
fact
can't
that
play no video, so we're out of time.
yeah.
Right.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see all of you next week, same time, same place. God bless.
Keep us on.
Wonderful.